It's that time of the year for all things scary, leaves turning orange, and handing out expensive drugs to children instead of candy. You already know what it is, it's October. I love October, or what some people may refer to as the spooky season. Horror media any time of the year really is great because of all the visceral reactions that it can evoke. Horror games in particular strike a specific chord in people. Look at the SCP and creepypasta communities, especially the former. That's got like a bunch of games coming out recently. Or even the early to mid 2010s trend of making horror game let's plays to see how popular horror games can be. I love the tensity that horror games often provide, with palm-sweating situations that can only be rivaled by clutch moments in competitive multiplayer games. So it shouldn't be a surprise that I spent most of October watching horror movies by day and replaying Dhewm 3 by night. Dhewm 3 is an interesting game. When I played it 2 years ago for the first time, I really didn't like it at first. I didn't really think of it any special. I mean, besides the intro, that's really cool and immersive, but I didn't really think much of it, you know? However, as I played it in some sort of sick and twisted way, the game eventually convinced me to appreciate it more than most people. Seriously, I thought about dropping the game, but when it clicked for me, it clicked, and I quickly joined the Dhewm 3 shotgun cult. Okay, I'm not a Dhewm 3 stan, but when I sometimes see discussions of the game, half the time people fucking hate on it too much or over-exaggerate the flaws. It's insane. This game has a ravine of a split smack down in the middle of the Dhewm community. People hate it with vitriol or love it to the point of saying that nothing else from its time comes close to it. I think it's an alright game. Pretty good at times even. It's usually overblown into being seen as a horrible game because of the controversial decisions made by id Software. So to celebrate Halloween, I'm going to try to convince you into giving Dhewm 3 a shot, or at least consider that it's not as bad as you may remember it. I want to tell anybody who's going to play Dhewm 3 to not play the BFG edition. I get more detailed into it later on in the video, but to sum it up, it's uglier and doesn't play like Dhewm 3 when it was originally released. If you want to play the way that God intended Dhewm 3 to be played, you'll play the version that is in the BFG edition, the original version. And since that's a game that was released in the early noughties, 2004 to be specific, I'm going to suggest downloading and running the game through the Dhewm 3 source port. You'll still need to own a copy of the game since this is only a source port, meaning it'll just help run the game better. It provides widescreen support and helps the game run on modern systems, so it's not changing the gameplay or visuals in any significant way. This is how I play the game for this review too, so what you're seeing on screen is how it looks on my computer through Dhewm 3. The first thing I like to do when talking about Dhewm 3 today is to bring up the first reason why some people dislike the game, its development. Dhewm 3 was the first mainline Doom game to not have involved one of its superstars, one of the two Johns. John Romero, the long-haired, gentle soul of a metalhead who now lives in the mystical land of Ireland doing his thing. You see, John Romero left id after the first Quake game due to creative differences with another big shot at id, the second John, or the other John, the living computer in a flesh suit named John Carmack, who eventually resigned from id to work on Oculus VR stuff full-time. When Romero left id alongside some other members, it had essentially become Carmack's show when it came to developing games. Carmack was very focused on pushing technology with the games id created, while Romero was into making cool stuff while listening to metal. This was the dynamic that id Software was making their games under for the longest of times. Wolfenstein 3D to Doom to Quake, each taking leaps in game technology while also each having their own unique charm to their respective worlds. So with Romero out of id and doing his thing at Ion Storm, Carmack was trying to turn people's computers into jet engines. I'm not trying to push auteur theory here, but it can be difficult to not look at this game with that angle sometimes. Due to Carmack's philosophy, many id fans see certain games from the company as glorified tech demos, which I don't think is entirely fair to say. I mean, the first Quake game is a masterclass in FPS gameplay. Quake 2 had OpenGL alongside body dismemberment. Rage improved upon id's megatextures tech through a process known as virtual texturing. Don't look at me, I tried reading it. I don't know enough to understand this completely. And Dhewm 3 had something called Carmack's Reverse, which was some form of light rendering invented by the man himself. This enabled for accurate real-time shadows for objects in the game world. So while John Romero may have been one of the many old heads at id that gave the Doom game soul, you really can't push aside the technical achievement that Carmack accomplished with his attempt at Doom, and in previous works. Seriously, this lighting is really impressive. This was incredible to see back in 2004, and honestly, it's still kind of impressive today. Like, some studios today still don't understand how to do lighting properly in their games. It's honestly astonishing. Dhewm 3 would have been awarded for its technological achievement by Computer Games magazine, but You know, Half-Life 2 came out 2 months later, so I'm sorry Carmack, but your lighting just can't beat Source Engine goodness. There are a couple of downsides to the light rendering of this engine in Tech 4. One being that the engine can't render soft shadows, no penumbras at all. Big fancy word of the day, penumbra. And the engine doesn't allow for global illumination. Still though, id Tech 4 can be a very nice looking game engine in the current day if done properly. But that's the thing, only if it's done properly. Because of the inability to create global illumination, Doom 3's engine promotes the heavy use of dramatic lighting, sharp pitch black shadows contrasted by bright highlights. Because of Doom 3's horror theme, this lighting is actually very beneficial to the art style and gameplay. For the most part. At times, Doom 3 can look incredibly atmospheric with moody lighting and its derelict setting. id Tech 4's lighting really enhances the feeling of dread in the air, in the lonely steel halls of Mars or the terror of walking through the ruins of hell. But it can also be detrimental at times where it can just be about impossible to see anything 3 feet in front of you. The Void of Darkness at least hides many of the very compressed mega textures used in the game. A lot of textures don't really age well in this game, like they are extremely crunchy. Doom 3's locales vary from industrial labs to industrial offices to industrial halls with some growths from hell. Oh, but there's also the occasional visit to the Martian surface if you were wondering. Most of Doom 3's runtime is spent in the gray metal rooms of the UAC Mars facility. It does its best to differentiate itself at times with the different machinery or intrusions from hell, but it still becomes a blur of steel walls for most of the game. The darkness really doesn't help at all with this. At least you get to visit hell towards the end, and that is a great location visually, making good use of the lighting that id Tech 4 is specialized for. Carmack's lighting is one of Doom 3's most controversial aspects, and rightfully so. In some areas, the lighting feels a bit too unbalanced towards the shadows, making it hard to see enemies at times. Thankfully, many of the enemies have glowing eyes and attacks light up. A bit of warning, though, some of these glowing lights are like 1 pixel. Enemy designs in this game are hit or miss. You've got alright designs with the maggots and imps. Then you've got the great designs with the Trites, Pinkies, and the now iconic Hell Knights, which have actually had their redesign stick around into the latest Doom games. But then let me show you the Stahlhelm wearing zombies with tentacle arms, the neutered Archvile, and fucking demon babies. Why are there fucking demon baby bug things? I'm not going to talk about the cacodemons, they're chill, I don't want any hate going towards them. Models in this game haven't aged the best though, to be honest, even for my boy the cacodemon, but especially for humanoid creatures. They're oddly pointy in certain spots, and they almost have a clay-like quality to them at times, making for an uncanny valley sort of effect. This is probably because, well, most of these characters are actually made with clay models and then scanned into 3D modeling software. Their quality is especially noticeable during cutscenes when the Marine is looking around or when people are talking instead of shooting demons. Seriously, look at their eyes, it's just, there's something off. These are not human beings. Let me show you something. This is Doom's combat. Now here's Doom 3's combat. Notice anything? That's right! The music! You see, Doom is almost always associated with the soundtrack. I mean, you probably already knew that with all the memes using its various soundtracks. There's good old E1M1, then there was BFG Division, and most recently, it was pretty much the entirety of the Doom Eternal soundtrack. Doom fans love the music for their games. Bobby Prince and Mick Gordon essentially made how Doom was expected to sound for their respective eras. So when Doom 3 dished the metal for a horror ambient soundtrack, I think you know how a lot of diehard fans felt and maybe still feel about the different direction. Though the YouTube comments for these tracks actually, a lot of people like them. What? Hey, at least for the classic Doom heads, the main menu is a banging tune. Honestly though, the ambient soundtrack is pretty killer, those YouTube comments are right. It perfectly sets the tone. It's a really well done soundtrack, though that is if you do hear it. Most of the time you'll be subjected to the indifference of the base's emptiness. The room ambiance is unwelcoming in the best way, with the cold hums of machinery and muffled gunshots of soon-to-be-dead survivors. Many areas have their own unique sounds, which helps to differentiate the metal rooms of each level. But it's still, you know, it's a big blur of steel. Overall, the ambiance is done pretty well, but it somewhat misses a brooding or hopeless atmosphere that something like the first Quake game does. Like the first Quake game, it was just constant dread in the soundtrack. In Doom 3, it's more like you're kind of in a haunted house or really haunted hallway. Hold on, I just found something? Oh, for fuck's sake! Weapons for the most part are well done, they're alright. With the exception of the plasma rifle, since it's one of, if not the best renditions of the plasma rifle in a Doom game. Listen to this reload, dude, it's pure bliss. The machine gun, on the other hand, is sure to disappoint ears though, sadly. Some guns just lack that much needed deep punch to sound dangerous and powerful, alongside them having not the greatest mixing where the environment can actually sometimes overpower the weapons. The enemies are thankfully the opposite. Demons will have your eyes scrambling across the room the moment you hear a whisper from anything. Because of the darkness and how demons can enter a room from pretty much the last place you'd expect, you'll be perking up your ears to the slightest murmur or footstep. The sounds of hell are generally done pretty well to evoke fear or discomfort. Warped moans, distorted inhuman screeches, and thundering zaps of hell magic make the demons sound as deadly as they look. It put a lot of effort to immerse the player into the game's atmosphere from just the audio alone. But you can appreciate that dedication more when actually playing the game. Doom 3's immersion also spills in through the gameplay. The single thing I remember the most from Doom 3 and that I loved a lot were the interactive screens. This was another big feature of this engine in Tech 4. Plenty of the other games, by plenty, like the handful of other games that were actually made on this engine, use this feature. It has this diegetic UI. This may seem like such a small thing, but it feels incredibly smooth by removing the need to pause the game and entering a menu pop-up to interact with the computer or locker. This immersive design for the UI leaks a bit into the HUD, as some weapons have their ammo counters displayed right onto the model. Dedicating time and resources to do things like this to immerse a player more into the world heightens the tension and paranoia that Doom 3 has a higher emphasis of exploiting. This is where the flashlight now enters the scene. Doom 3's darkness is tangible, like a great sludge that paints the walls black. The only thing that can cut through it is light, so the flashlight is a very vital tool, and unlike many other shooters, the flashlight has to be equipped as its own weapon. You aren't defenseless when holding the flashlight, you get to fight back with it, though its hitbox isn't that great and some enemies may be too tanky for it. But it's this trade-off for sight versus firepower that creates tensity, though this wasn't a very liked mechanic by some people. In fact, that group of displeased fans were so upset that 8 years later after Doom 3's release, id Software came out with Doom 3 BFG Edition, a remaster, remake, whatever you want to call it, which basically brought the game to modern systems. What it also did was change the lighting and how the flashlight worked. Now, instead of the flashlight being its own weapon, it was mounted onto your left shoulder, meaning you can hold guns and light up a room at the same time. I don't care if it's the future, and that guns or armor should have a mounted flashlight because that's realistic. This is what I would do if I was a soldier. The BFG edition completely ruins that feeling that anything can jump from the shadows or around any corner. The darkness and audio really kept me on my toes, which honestly is a bit easy because I can be somewhat of a bitch when playing a horror game. Regardless, I found myself looking over my shoulder, checking my back every so often throughout the game's playtime, and the enemies spawning behind you sometimes don't really help with that paranoia. Because of this intensity and paranoia that the darkness builds, changing the game to be brighter and allowing the player to hold a flashlight while also being able to shoot at the same time, it just removes all that intensity. It becomes another generic shooter. Now that I'm about to start talking about combat, I've got to talk about the shotgun. Doom 3 shotgun is a cursed topic of debate within the Doom community. It's notoriously nothing like the previous game's shotguns and has garnered a hateful reputation. It is a unique thing of its time. There's no other Doom game with this shotgun. People hate how it looks. People hate how it shoots. People hate it in general. Over time though, the shotgun has pulled through and grown a cult of appreciators, either out of genuine love for it or for shits and giggles. Regardless, the shotgun is not terrible. It can one-shot most normal enemies and can even kill an Archvile in 4 shots. The thing is though, the reason why it's the bane of so many Doom fans' existences is because it has got an incredibly large shot spread. Look at this. I'd be lucky to hit anything past 5 meters. In previous Doom games, the shotgun was a workhorse weapon. It was used to conserve ammo for the more powerful weapons, to clear out fodder demons, and to shoot anything that moves when you didn't get the super shotgun yet. Now, it's a pseudo melee weapon that can kill things across a hallway in less than 2 shots if you're really lucky. But that's also why it's not terrible. It can be pretty strong if you hit all your pellets. Imps, gone. Maggots, dead. Wraiths, ethered. When aimed at the demon's sweet spot, and also right up in their face, all of the lesser demons are able to get their teeth kicked in by the shotgun. But because of that huge shot spread, you can still sometimes miss 1 or even 2 pellets and not one-shot the demon. Having to get right up in front of a demon to use the shotgun to its full power is exciting. Sacrificing the safety of distance makes for good stress in combat, especially if there's multiple demons to avoid. So that's why the shotgun's not bad, but I'm far from saying that it's amazing. The other weapons are considerably standard fare for a Doom game. Listing them off, there's a pistol you'll forget about, a machine gun, a plasma rifle, grenades to chuck around corners, a chain gun, a rocket launcher, a surprisingly powerful chainsaw, and the iconic BFG. The machine gun and grenades are what you'd expect, an automatic rifle and explosives in the palm of your hand. The only new significant weapon in this game that's worth talking about is the Soul Cube. You get this thing late in the game and it lets you insta-kill an enemy of your choice after killing 5 demons. When an enemy is killed, the Soul Cube heals the player to full health, making it more powerful of a tool than it already was. Pointing at a dude and saying you're dead is already really strong, but having it also bring you up to basically full health, that's like a get out of jail free card. Using the Soul Cube is especially useful in higher difficulties where you take more damage on each level of increasing difficulty. Though, when I used the Soul Cube, it really was only for killing the tankiest or deadliest enemy in the room. The heal can be useful, but I found myself pretty much always at full health. The only times when I've gotten to low health are because of me fucking around or just literally turning off my brain. The closest I can get to dying is when I'm being pummeled by a demon, because when you get hit by a melee attack in this game, your vision is fucked. It's really annoying when you get hit by a pinky or any melee attack. The screen jumps up and it's blurred to hell. It's almost always best to play from a distance or hold a choke point with a shotgun. I played this time around on normal difficulty because I wanted something a bit more casual, but I first played it on veteran difficulty and I don't really remember dying too much or running low on ammo. The ammo economy is very generous to the player. Some people categorize Doom 3 into the survival horror genre, but because of this ammo abundance, it's not that at all. It's an action horror game, really. There's no managing ammo or inventory in this game. The only thing you do is shoot demons in the face. I was almost always at full ammo throughout my playthrough, and it would have stayed that way if it wasn't for the strip the player of their weapons cliche level. Having an overabundance of bullets and rockets takes away any worries and stress of hoping to have enough ammo for future encounters. Seriously, and what game would you need 300 shotgun shells for? Why the fuck does it even go this high? The ammo situation creates a sense of security that can give you too much comfort at times. It takes away from the horror atmosphere with the power that comes with that feeling of carrying a fully loaded BFG with plenty of ammo to spare. The occasional secrets provide goodies to help you, but it's actually the lockers that litter the levels that contribute to the high amounts of ammo you tend to find yourself having. The lockers are almost a core part of the gameplay loop. You explore a level, find a locker, eventually find the code, and get rewarded with an armory of ammo or health. Doom 3 makes sure to tell the player that you can read and listen to audio logs to get the codes to lock doors, or even the illustrious lockers. But there are a lot of them, and most of them have a lot of loot in them. It feels like they were added in bulk because of the interactive screen feature I liked so much. These lockers, and even the Half-Life-esque healing stations that appear after almost every big fight, remove any sort of strategy with the resources the player gets. Doom Eternal, for example, has the emphasis of making its battles a dance of swapping weapons that best fit the situation and to increase efficiency. Doom Eternal's approach to ammo, like it or not, made its combat more interesting while raising the skill ceiling. Classic Doom, on the other hand, had ammo set out with intention. id Software, with the first 2 Doom games, made sure to not give Doom Guy enough bullets to kill the demons in the level 10 times over. They made sure not to give him 300 shotgun shells, because why the fuck would he need that many? The only time classic Doom would give extra ammo would be when the player would find a secret as a reward for being more explorative. Doom 3 has gotten rid of the colored keycards of yore and instead has replaced them with, well, the same keycards, but also now with PDAs and codes. Doom used to be a treasure hunt for red, blue, and yellow keycards. You explore maze-like and sometimes expansive levels for these different keys to open up new areas to the map. It was a fun and engaging way to pace and design levels through the promotion of exploration. Doom 3 is now about following a series of corridors. You keep continuing forward and forward until you find or stumble upon a PDA, keycard, whatever, that gives you the needed security clearance to proceed. Rooms don't ever get that big, the biggest they get are the dungeons of hell. This to me is a double-edged sword, the smallness of the level design. The cramped rooms and halls make for a more intimate and intense experience by having the player almost face to face with the horrors. The claustrophobic level design even puts a new twist on an old level design technique found in the classic Doom games. Doom 3 makes extensive use of something called monster closets, which are basically small hidden compartments made to house monsters until a trigger is activated. The player is ambushed throughout the game with a considerable amount of surprises done by these closets, coming together to build distrust into the player. Or it can just be a cheap shot gimmick at times, to be honest. So what if the levels weren't cramped halls and were instead larger? Like the classic games. I think that if some of the arenas were expanded and enemy count was increased, then it could have made for some good arena shooter fun. It'd definitely give a better excuse for the insane amounts of ammo. Bigger rooms could also help distinguish different areas as seen by the larger rooms found throughout the facility. The more open rooms and areas are more memorable than many of the halls, crawl spaces, and maintenance closets that make up the majority of the game. But because of Doom 3's design, the old arenas just wouldn't work for its combat. Doom 3 introduces reloading to Doom, and it'd be the only mainline Doom game to have reloading for all its weapons. So in extended fights against the demons, if you empty a gun, you'll either switch weapons or reload. This maybe could work for arena encounter design, but Doom 3 makes reloading a commitment. You cannot cancel reloads. There's no weapon swapping here. Well, there is, but if you reload, forget about it. The other new feature that is only found in Doom 3 compared to its younger and older siblings is a stamina bar. You can now sprint for only a limited amount of time if you're not in hell. This limited stamina would for sure ruin any attempt at an arena encounter filled to the brim with demons. So, because of how Doom 3 was designed, the classic arena encounters are completely thrown out the window and would need to be designed for slower paced combat, at least if it was attempted. Which is a shame because Doom 3 certainly could have had tense large battles against a horde of demons. It could still be as stressful as the horror sections in the game, as demonstrated by the few high action sections found in the expansion, Resurrection of Evil. Now, here's the kicker. I know I just suggested all these additions and changes for arena combat in Doom 3. Don't fucking do that. It takes away from the slow, methodical combat. The intended shots, the positioning, it takes away from that experience instead of it being a fast, thrilling adrenaline rush. It should instead be a slow trudge of a fight for your life sort of deal. So while Doom 3's combat might be slow, it's by no means terrible or bad. Fast combat doesn't mean good encounter design. Doom 3's new linear level design can sometimes become repetitive, but the levels do make change-ups every once in a while. The rotating bridge of the CPU process, the moving platforms of the Alpha Labs, the weirdly included puzzles found in a couple of the levels, and of course, the great exception of this critique, hell and its dense dread. There are some mostly decent mix-ups to the monotony of steel halls. Doom 3 makes it hard with the lighting and setting to set apart most levels from each other. Gets a bunch of steel rooms, there's a lot of like gory levels, though some of the goriness is a bit unique to some levels, like the offices of this one level that I just cannot name. I think it's in Alpha Labs? No, it's in Delta Labs. I don't know. It's hard for me to name most of the levels individually without googling the level list. There's almost nothing memorable like in the older or even newer Doom games. There were visual flares and standout arenas that left an impression in those games. Doom 3 has a couple of these, but because of how dark it is, it just kinda blurs in my memory. Doom Eternal had Super Gore Nest, Mars Core, and Necrovault, while the classic Dooms had Toxin Refinery, Dead Simple, and even the Chasm. As divisive as the Chasm may be among some fans, there's no denying that it stands out in memory. But if it's the old Dooms that people miss, then this DLC should please them in one big way. It brings back the super shotgun. Doom 3 received an expansion about half a year after its release, in April if I want to say that, I think it's April. Resurrection of Evil is more of the same stuff, but with a higher focus on action. It's actually a good romp of horror and Doom 3's slower paced combat, hiding the stress of overwhelming odds and otherworld horrors found in Doom 3. As I mentioned earlier, Doom's most beloved weapon returns, and it's as powerful as previous iterations in Doom 3's own way and style. But the DLC adds 2 more weapons, the Half-Life 2 gravity gun and a slow-mo heart. The heart is pretty self-explanatory, it's another get out of jail free card. You collect a soul to charge it up to 3 times, and each charge puts you into a slowed down world where you run faster than everything. It's slow-mo mode, it's fun to use. The gravity tool is one of the many reasons that Doom 3 looks like its attempt at trying to make Half-Life. The base game already has a lot of similarities to the first Half-Life. I mean, both games take place in a research facility in a desert going through some sort of catastrophe. That and the train rides. Though, believe it or not, the grabber may have actually not been inspired by Half-Life 2. Id Software claims that it was a dev tool used to create, and I'm quoting this, realistically damaged rooms. So what they do with this doohickey is they'd block out a room, set up the objects, and then trash the place with the gun? I have no idea. This is what they said. But then again, Valve Software revealed Half-Life 2 gravity gun gameplay at E3 in 2003, so it still could have been inspired, though it'd be really fucking quick if they did. The new weapons make the game more fast-paced, with the heart and super shotgun letting the player dish out more damage in shorter bursts. The grabber lets you grab projectiles and objects, but it's not needed throughout the whole DLC. I think it's actually only needed once when it's introduced for a boss fight, though it is a useful way to save ammo if you ever need to. Overall, Resurrection of Evil highlights the best parts of the base game while also adding some new things, but also not improving the game in insanely significant ways. The level design is still fairly linear, the ammo count is high, and the story is just as unmemorable. Let me give you a piece of id trivia with a quote from our beloved technomancer John Carmack. Story in a game is like a story in a porn movie. It's expected to be there, but it's not important. Aside from this quote sounding stupid and aging poorly, like incredibly poorly, holy shit, I would try my best to bury this under the rug if I said that. It'd keep me up at night. It has some validity to it, at least for id Software. Carmack's quote sums up id's writing style in Doom 3 and previous games. Although Doom 3 has a higher focus on storytelling and dedication to crafting a world, the writing in Doom 3 is passable at best. It's just acceptable. There really isn't a story to talk about, it's more like a plotline for the player to follow. It boils down to there being a cartoonishly evil scientist character and demons that you must stop since you're the one and only badass Marine. It's not amazing, it's not terrible, it's just usable. There are no real themes to dissect or dig into, and even if there were, it doesn't offer that much. I mean, what do you expect? It's a Doom game. Do you really think you'd click on this video and expect me to talk about capital and worker exploitation? The majority of the game lore and story, though, is told through PDA emails and audio logs and video discs. All those things really do is build up the world and enforce how fucked up the facility is and how fucked up the UAC as a company is. It's really there for nerds that care about the lore, the world, the characters, and how everything works and the character dynamics if there are any. I mean, a lot of these emails are just spam or a little joke to laugh at. Beneath all the tense combat and shadowy halls is a story of little significance and little depth. Doom 3's got as much story as the end game screens of the first 2 Doom games. Doom 3 is not remembered for its story. The same can be said about all the other Doom games, new or old. Doom 3 is instead remembered for its gameplay, just like the other Dooms, even if that gameplay was and still remains to be controversial within its community. Aside from maybe some history, I hope I could give some insight into Doom 3 and id Software. The 2 main things you should take away are, 1. Doom 3 is not as bad as what some people may say, and 2. The only thing the BFG edition is good for is playing Doom 3 in VR. Doom 3 may not be like classic Doom, and honestly if you want a horror atmosphere classic Doom game, then you should really play Doom 64. since it's insanely good. But Doom 3 is still a Doom game. While it changes some of the core game design choices like explorative level design, arena fight enemy encounters, and fast-paced shooting, it still retains a cheesy action tone at times and also keeps the brutality of the demons found in every single Doom game. I mean, if Doom 2016 gets to be called a Doom game while being significantly different from the originals, I don't see why Doom 3 can't be considered a Doom game as well. The need for Doom 3 to be similar to the originals is probably one of the biggest reasons that Doom 3 is as notorious as it is. I mean, imagine being a hardcore Doom fan in 2004 and receiving something unexpected after waiting for a new game since 1994. And then to make it worse for you, the next time you'd get a new Doom game would be 12 years later in 2016. You wouldn't know that, of course. I think Doom 3 had garnered an incredible amount of spite from fans for not being entirely what they wanted and being essentially the only new Doom game they had for a little over a decade, which, to be fair, is probably a really good thing. Doom 4 was looking like it was going to be heavily inspired by successful FPS games at the time like Call of Duty and Battlefield. I don't think anybody wanted or currently wants Call of Doom. That's the real horror of this video. No one wants that. No one wants that. Doom 3 is a fairly fine game. It's got its flaws for sure, but it's definitely not a horrifically bad game. In focusing on the horror of Doom and creating a high level of immersion, I can wholeheartedly commend id for what they accomplished, and even recommend the game to those looking for a slower paced horror FPS game. It's the black sheep of the Doom franchise, but it'll still let you rip and tear demons. Plus, any game that makes a John Carpenter reference in its opening cutscene is good in my book. Thanks for watching, and happy Halloween season, or Halloween, whatever, happy Halloween! As much as I dislike doing this, I'm gonna start doing it now at the end of the videos. If you enjoyed the video, leaving a like and comment helps appease the machine, which in the end would help me get more eyes on my stuff. I'd appreciate it a lot, so yeah, feel free to do that if you like. I don't know. It was fun returning to Doom 3 this year, and that's been something that I've been wanting to do for a while now. I really enjoy retro shooter games, or boomer shooters, whatever the hell they're called. God, boomer shooter is such an awful name. I'm adding that to my list of terrible genre names for media. I'm not going to turn into a boomer shooter channel though, don't worry. I may eventually cover some more or similar games because I really enjoy them, and I think some are actually worth talking about. Though I will try to avoid the ones that are insanely covered, but if I like it too much I might as well just talk about it. It'll probably be a shorter video unless I have something cool to add to it. Like the last video, I'm not sure when I'll get another video out because I don't even know what to make afterwards. I mean, I've got a couple ideas, but I can't decide on it right now. Though I kinda crunched on this video, so I have a bunch of life obligations I need to catch up on. That's probably the bigger reason as to why I don't know when or what to make a video on after this one. But yeah, hope you have a good Halloween. Enjoy some campy, cheesy horror goodness this year. I, for one, am gonna go watch a Cronenberg now. Maybe a Carpenter flick, I don't know. And I'm gonna hand out cigarettes out my front door to any 5-year-olds that come knocking. I'm not actually gonna do that. Have a good one.